we've got about an hour. We promised fans that we were going to get up close and personal with the guys, you know, questions and storytelling and all that, so maybe we'll get started. And Bob knows this is going to happen. Okay, you want to just take questions right away? The question's about thumb pick and flat pick.
Yeah, I did both.
Why do you thumb pick now all the time?
Well, that's what I'm used to.
Gives you bigger guitar sound.
I can't get that thing off my thumb.
Do you have a question? No. No. Okay, next question. What's your question?
Did Don ever try any leads?
Does Don play leads? Have you listened to any of the Ventures albums and read the liner notes? Yeah, well, he has, and his sound is pretty characteristic. So let's tell him about your lead playing, Don.
Actually, when we first started, Don probably played more lead than I do in the beginning.
No, I listened to Duane Eddy a lot, you know, when I was a kid, and I played a lot of his stuff. It's easy, you know. It's got a great sound, good feel. The guy's really good, but it's pretty easy stuff to play, and that's just about my caliber. So anything that you hear on there that was mostly Duane Eddy stuff, I tried to pick the lead on that one, or those Ghost Riders. That's right.
And then things like the Switch.
Oh yeah, well, a few little things like that. But I used to play a lot of lead guitar when Bob and I first started. Like he said, I played more lead than he did, but poorly. And then we met Noki and we both quit. That was the end of that story. Did I? Noki did, yeah. Noki. That was a great lead, wasn't it? Gee, it looked kind of steel guitar licks there. Ooh, I love that.
What music do you guys listen to at home?
Whatever they play on Fox News, I listen to that. Play a little music on it.
Yeah, no, he's into that rap, boy, I'll tell you. Yeah.
Want to hear it again?
Hey Noki, can you do the? I love the beginning of El Comanchero. That is just the coolest lick, and it's on the. I don't know if you guys heard the Live in Seattle CD, but if you heard, it's just awesome. So go crazy. Unbelievable. Don't be bashful. Questions? The third bridge in Caravan. The third bridge in Caravan. Question, follow up. Sure.
Oh, I was going to give you a card so as you know. I'll put it on the shows. Just so we can have contact. I'd love to get some copies.
The question is, in the 60s they had a certain sound, a so-called surf sound, and in the 70s it changed, and now you say that they're coming back to the sort of the roots. So the question is, why, or is,
Yeah, but the small stuff, that's not.
you want to comment on that, Tom? On what, the sound seems to be more pure like the 60s now as opposed to 70s and 80s.
Well, we tried to keep up with a lot of trends, you know. We got into, what did we do, Underground Fire, that CD, which had a lot of things that we wrote. And lately, I don't know, we just felt like getting back into, for no particular reason, just a feeling that everybody has that you want to kind of get back into playing the stuff that you started with. And it seemed to be the most commercial for us anyway. A lot of people didn't like us changing into that kind of thing, you know, it just wasn't kind of venture-y, but now we're getting back into more of the venture style, so.
I have a question for Jeff Cook.
Jeff Cook.
Jeff,
Okay, it's your mouth, you can haul coal in it. What- If you want to.
Jeff, I have a question for you. It's obvious that among their peers, the ventures are held in high regard. What do you feel about the Hall of Fame slate? Can you give us your take on that?
If I understand what you're saying, do I think they should be in the Hall of Fame? Well, hell yes. And last Sunday night in Mobile, Alabama, at the Alabama Music Hall of Fame Awards, the head man for the Hall of Fame was there. I can't remember his name right now, but I'm going to find out and I'm going to write a letter for whatever good it'll do.
Yeah.
Why would we have that signed by all of us here?
Yeah, can I say something about that? Yeah, I think that would be good if we had a letter and everybody signed it, but I think what would be more effective if they got a piece of mail from each one of us here. And everybody else, you know. Maybe both ways. Do it all one time and then everybody write your individual thing, but I don't know where to write it is.
Jan Winter. Put it on the site.
What's that?
Jan Winter. The guy who runs it.
Yeah.
The Rolling Stones Center.
Yeah, I think that's his name.
I think that's been done quite a bit.
Maybe we need to talk about that.
And there's all the Underground Fire members, I think, have been sending letters for years. I believe, I don't know how many, but quite a few. Here's a question over here.
I am. No, it's we're a pretty democratic group here. We, pretty much.
Sometimes we get requests from the record company. Quite often that happens. They will request a certain type of album, like a twist album or something like that. Or sometimes they'll even request certain songs that they want us to play. And if they just suggest a category, or sometimes we'll suggest a category, then we set about figuring out what we're going to put on there, that'll be consistent with that concept. So it really varies a great deal.
And there's a lot of times too that, like we did this Southern All-Stars album. They were a very popular group and have been for a long time in Japan. And the first one we did very well, indeed. So we venturized it a little bit. The second one we even venturized more. And they both sold very well. And that's important to a record company. Of course, we get royalties, so that's a motivation. So, well, that Surfin' Baja album is some of the things that we had written within the next, within the last, about 94 maybe, something like that. Because Mel is on some of those. Yeah, we do, yeah.
Quite a bit more than that.
Yeah.
I would say more than 500, so it'd take a pretty big CD to get that.
We had a question, speaking of Mel, actually, for Leon.
I know you, Mel, your father. Did you just fall into it, or did he did he teach you? Did you just follow it in his footsteps because you wanted it? How did you become the drummer? Did you fall into it?
Well, I started playing when I was about maybe 9 years old. You know, a lot of drummers, a lot of kids that want to be drummers, they find anything that they can pound on. You know, I used pots and pans, trash cans turned upside down. Cardboard hanger, the cardboard inserts on hangers for drumsticks. You know, and my dad, he noticed that I was taking an interest in being a drummer, so he taught me a few things along the way, and he bought me a snare drum. That was my first thing I ever learned how to play, was the snare drum, and moved on from there. Bass drum, hi-hat, ride cymbal, rack tom, floor tom. You know, he added little pieces at a time to make sure I was really interested. And he was a big influence in my playing, you know, growing up. And as far as falling into playing with the Ventures, I mean, that was just sort of a natural thing. You know, it was I think the choice was a good choice for me and for the Ventures. You know. Growing up listening to the Ventures, I was growing up listening to Ventures. I was, as a kid, I sort of kind of fell into that surf sound, you know. When I was a kid, I grew up listening to a lot of bands, Iron Butterfly, you know, John Mayall, a lot of different bands. But you know, my dad was a big influence, and that's probably where my style comes from. It's mostly from my dad.
I was curious to know, because a lot of kids who grew up in college, or what's going on in their family, you know, whether their father, their parents are doing this, but even the music they're listening to, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what they're going to end up liking.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I played a lot of different types of music before I hooked up with the Ventures. I had my own original band playing, you know, Hollywood circuit. It was an instrumental band. It wasn't. It was, you know, it was top. Well, I played a lot of top 40, and you know, just wherever I could play, I played. You know, I had a band with my brother, who was a bass player, and we played a Hollywood circuit doing. I mean, I was in a gospel rock and roll band for a while even. I mean, it was just wherever I could play, whatever outlet I could find to play. I just chose it. You know? So I mean, my influences are varied. Not just the Ventures, not just my dad, but a lot of artists. Alan White just blows me away. I mean, I listen to, as you guys ask what music we listen to when we go home, I listen to lots of different types of music. Yes is one of them. Alan's amazing drummer.
Yeah, back when you're Dwayne any of I sure like to see Dwayne. Dwayne, yeah, do a tour with you guys, you know,
Well, no, we've never done a tour together. I've never talked about it, really. We did talk about doing an album together, and about, I don't know, 6 or 8 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, he did 2 songs with us on an album that was released in Japan. It's the closest we ever came to it, but we talked about it several times. We've done a few things with him, such as being together on a TV show and things like that, but never any kind of tour, or not even a concert.
Bob, what guitar did you use on the original Walk Up the Line? What setting? What pickup setting?
You talking about on the lead? It was a Jazzmaster. As far as I know, it was. I was told it was the first Jazzmaster that hit Seattle, which is where I was living at the time. And I bought the Jazzmaster just shortly before we recorded Walked Over On. And I used settings like everything is wide open, and that's how I still play today. All the buttons are full. Lead, treble and bass and volume. And I do all my adjustments on the amplifier. That way I seem like I get the best sound. So I did Jazzmaster on the guitar, and the amplifier was a dual show, two 12-inch speakers.
Plan to do any more Western announcements?
I ain't getting paid for this.
Yeah, I had to remind him, didn't you? What was the question again?
Any plans to do another country Western album?
The plan, are there plans for a country and western album? The first one was fantastic. Comments?
If not, Jim? Yeah.
How about me and You see, Randy would tell you himself that he didn't have a radio till he was 12, and I'm not sure that he knows who they are. He knows who Randy Owen is, and that's about it.
No, but you know, when we first met Jeff, he was talking about that country album. Remember the country album? Yeah. So, do we plan on doing another one? No. No, we really don't have any plans to do it. I don't know if everybody in here will buy one. I suppose we would.
Would you buy one, people?
Yeah! All right, will you buy 10? Yeah! More surf.
We'll all kick in $100 for the session. We'll all get 1% of 0.5%. Okay? All right. Got a question, yeah?
Do you have a favorite album? I'm thinking primarily of the early stuff that you did in the days of the first one, the Ventures, the Colorful Ventures and that. But do you have a favorite?
Well, the actual favorite is the latest one we've ever done. Yeah, that's always our favorite.
I think we probably each have our own favorites. My personal favorite, I think, is the Joy album, which is all the classical stuff done in rock style. What's your favorite? Venture album. No favorite.
What's your favorite instrument?
You know, they're all your babies. You know, they really are. I really don't have a favorite either. I couldn't pick out one. You know, my God, how many have we released? Over 30 or something like that? I don't know. It'd be hard for me to say. Very hard. I do like the Joy album, like Bob does, but and I like, yeah, I guess I'm an old guy. I like the 10th anniversary album and stuff like that. But if I were going to sit down and listen to the Ventures, it'd probably those things I would listen to.
Noki, who's the most accomplished guitarist that you ever heard?
Probably Chet Atkins.
Noki, do you remember the super sessions that you did in '88 with the guest artists? You looked like you were having a ball. Which of those fancy guitar players did you think was a favorite? Do you remember the names? Or Robbie Krieger from the Doors, or
Yeah.
Rick Derringer, Jeff
They were all
Baxter,
good. Yeah, everyone.
Peter Frampton.
Peter Frampton was on that.
Yeah.
Also, I would say also Jeff Baxter is, he'd be hard to beat for anyone in the world, in my opinion. Really good.
But Peter Frampton, yeah, I think they played Apache together or something, and he played twin or harmony. Really turned out good. I really like that. I always wanted to put that on a CD, but we never did. Maybe someday.
I have a question. I was wondering, so many bands have played the Ed Sullivan Show. Were the Ventures ever approached to play the Sullivan Show?
Never. No, we're the Rodney Dangerfields of the rock world. Yeah, we don't get no respect. What is the story?
Well, what was the experience like when you did the lip sync? I remember you did your dance steps.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I don't remember much about it. Bob might.
Well, I remember Fabian was on the show with us.
Yeah, Lloyd Price.
Lloyd Price. And that was it. Lloyd Price and us. And actually, we were, when Walk Don't Run started hitting, it hit so fast, we were still on the construction jobs now.
Actually, truly, we were.
And we got a call from our producer, which was Bob Reisdorf, the owner of Dalton Records at the time. And he said, this record is it's destined to be a big hit, there's no doubt about it, and Dick Clark wants you on the American Bandstand, so you need to quit your job now. We need to go in next week and get wardrobe and then fly to New York and do the show. And I said, well, I got to give my boss notice, and he said, no, there's no time. Everything's happening too fast. I said, well, if I quit, what am I going to live on? So he put us on a draw at that time, immediate draw against our royalties. That was the end of the construction.
Yeah, as I remember, it was $150 a week, and we thought, whoa, baby.
That was big money then, in 1960.
You know, we did a lot of local shows in Los Angeles, like if anybody from Los Angeles and is as old as I am, they aren't, believe me. We did things like 9th Street West. Hullabaloo, yeah, Hullabaloo. And we worked at places called the Cinnamon Cinder and
Hollywood a Go-Go, we were on many times.
Hollywood a Go-Go, yeah. Shindig, yeah, Shindig. Yeah, yeah. Pardon me?
One little tidbit, at the end of the first year, we were presented with 2 awards by Merv Griffin. It was on, called the Saturday Night Prom, I think.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
And this was before he went into his talk show. But that was, we were on that show, played a few songs, which was a nationwide show. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Not in our possession. I'm sure they're maybe still alive, but I don't know where.
Which album was your biggest commercial success?
Probably Telstar.
That'd be Telstar, yeah.
Yeah. You know, how that happened was, we were pretty good at finding, like, bubbling under the top 100. And so songs came from different places. And you know, if you want to think about instrumentals, you can count them on one hand or both hands, at least that. Because most instrumentals are either a theme from a movie or a TV show or something that got a lot of exposure. But how many can you name that were big hits? You know, Walk Don't Run, Wipeout, Pipeline, you know, all those things. Torquay, okay. And I don't know, Bulldog, and you know, these kind of things. Unless they were a big band, you know, like Percy Faith had a theme from a summer place, things like that. But instrumentals are awful hard to come by, so they're tough. You know, a lot of people say, well, how do you get your sound? And we don't have to work on it. It comes natural. You know, when Bob and I first met, we were doing construction. And we bought 2 guitars in a pawn shop in 1950, late 58. And in June of 1960, we had a #2 hit in the nation. Now, we put in about 5 years in that 18 months, I can tell you that. I mean, we rehearsed, we practiced, we bought books, we learned chords, we played dives. You know, anybody that would listen to us, we played for their party for nothing. And we started playing all kinds of different styles and types of music. But, you know, when he first started, or we first started together, like I played a lot of lead, and we switched back and forth, and we actually called ourselves, to begin with, the Versatones. Called ourselves the Versatones. And we went to register the name, and thank God it was already taken. We'd be the Versatones. Okay, let's see. And then we found that out, so we called ourselves the Impacts for about, I don't know, an hour and a half. And then my mom, actually, she's had a lot to do with our career. She said, well, listen, you guys are venturing into a new field. Why don't you call yourselves the Ventures? So stuck, and here we are. Yeah, what's a typical songwriting session like?
Ask John Drill.
Yeah, that's Johnny. Come on, John, get in here.
Well, you sit down at the piano or grab your guitar and you just come up with some kind of a hook, something musical you like. With these guys, I think they did. I wrote with them for Japan a lot. We did a lot of
different
You know
ones.
what?
A lot of times somebody would come in with a basic melody, maybe no bridge or whatever, and then we'd just all get together and embellish it and sometimes someone would come up with something and say, well, let's try this instead, and then pretty soon the song would start to evolve.
a lot of times I'd have a keyboard melody of some kind, and Bob would hear it and have some ideas, or Don, and it was kind of a mishmash, we'd get together, and then I remember back in those days in the early 70s, we'd hear about it from Japan later, and I mean, it was amazing, some of those old songs, and still going, it's, they're unbelievable. Some of the old songs that we wrote back in the early 70s are standards over there in the karaoke bars, and I mean, you hear them everywhere, it's amazing. So,
Well, that's a good question. Why are we popular when other groups have gone? Well, we're not as popular as we used to be, but we keep putting out CDs, I mean, and albums and recording, and I guess there's a demand for it. I think we're unique. I don't think there's anybody quite like the Ventures, and we have a lot of guitar players that learn to play off of our records, as we did off of Les Paul and Duane Eddy and Chet Atkins and all these people. And of course, I don't know if you know that. Well, let me get back to the bubbling under thing now. I lost track of that. We used to have a pretty good knack of finding a song that was bubbling under. We'd hear it on the radio, and it's going to be a top 100. Well, we'd go in and record it, and just like we heard Herb Alpert and the Lonely Bull, and we went in and did that. And we put those two songs together, and both of them became like #1 hits, one time or another. So, I mean, maybe all at the same time, back and forth. I remember going to Herb Alpert's office, Bob and I, and with Bob Reisdorf, and they had a small office, he and Jerry Moss, who started A&M Records, therefore the name A&M. But anyway, we went in, he was so excited, he said, wow, I just got a royalty check from your recording of Lonely Bull. Man, I'm so thrilled. Now, of course, he could buy us and sell us. And it has many times, I guess. He's done very well. Very well. Yeah, this is another thing I like to say. Walk Don't Run, we've never had a #1 hit. Never. Walk Don't Run was #1 on a lot of local charts, but when Walk Don't Run was in the top 10. It was not a slow 3 or 4 months, I'll tell you. We would have made #1 pretty easy if it weren't for these songs that we were in competition with. Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini. Only the Lonely, Roy Orbison. Okay, these are all the top 5. The Twist, Chubby Checker. It's Now or Never, Elvis Presley. And Walk Don't Run. You know, and they kept switching from 3 to 1 to 3 to 1, 3 to 1. We'd buy that billboard and go and see if we were going to beat number 1. And we always stayed at number 2, so we can't brag about that, I guess. Yes?
But if you sell nearly 100 million albums, it don't matter if you have another album.
Yeah, I guess we've done pretty well. Yeah, I'll get to you in just a second. Yeah, we've done pretty well. You know, we never had a lot of single records. You know, actually we did, but they didn't really hit high on the charts. But we just seemed to sell albums like crazy. We were at one point we were responsible for our record company. We were responsible for 25% of their total volume with all their other artists, and that went on for about 10 years, I guess. So, you know, and we've sold so many records in Japan. I mean, Japan has just been incredible for us. We've written songs like with Johnny, you know, and Jerry McGee, and Noki, and Bob and I. And a lot of those songs went to number 1 in Japan. And what happened was that they would write words to these songs in Japanese language. And they would have a girl singer, and both records went up the charts at the same time. And those, so, you know, we have probably, I don't know, written about 5 actual standards, like Stardust would be here, or something like that, you know. So we have about 5 of them in Japan. And actually, about, of all the CDs we've sold, probably about, I would say between 50 and 60 million are only in Japan. And that's about half the population of the United States. And as you know, Japan's about, you could fit Japan in the boundaries of California, so it's a pretty small country. But anyway, thank God for Japan. And thank God for you. Yeah. What was that question over there? Okay.
What made you pick up the guitar initially?
When I was born, I started playing the guitar when I was 5 years old. And then I did an interview in North Carolina, and they asked me that. They said, when did you start playing? And I said, when I was 5. He said, what did you do before that? And I said, I drove truck.
You and Elvis. Yeah. What's part 2?
Right now I'm working with some people in Los Angeles. A friend of mine, Steve Dorff, we're working on some new songs. I've basically been songwriting. When it's, you know, I don't know if a lot of you know, but when I first got started out in Hollywood, it was because of Don and Bob. They hired me. I had a bunch of songs that I brought over from a former group called the Five Americans, and we'd split up. And we had hits and all that. And when I got to Hollywood, I had all these Five American songs. And I couldn't wait to get down on the strip and, you know, get these songs recorded. And nobody wanted one, because it was just me, and they didn't want them. So I talked to Bobby V. They didn't want me. But anyway, Bobby V saved my pants, I'll tell you that. He said, he talked to Mel, I think it was, he said, or you, and he said, the Ventures are looking for a keyboard player. And I fell right into it. I went over and auditioned, and they took mercy on me and said, here's $10, come back next Monday. Anyway, I hooked on with the guys, and you know, I've got financially secure the next 4 or 5 years. We're touring with them, and then I went into songwriting full time, and the experience with them was invaluable. In fact, the first songs we learned in our old group back in the 50s or early 60s were some of the songs they cut in the early 60s. I think you guys had a version of Rawhide we did or something. And Ghost Riders in the Sky, we learned all those things. So my affinity with the guys has gone on from day one. And when I got into writing, I wrote for Cher and Sinatra, different people I've worked with in my wide and varied career, and I've been blessed by a lot of good things happening. But what I'm currently doing is right on this ship, I'm with these guys, and they're really close to me, and I love them. I always have, always love them.
You know, there's a few things you might not know about John. He can tell you what he's written for different people.
For sure, I wrote Dark Lady back in the early 70s. And I wrote part of Half Breed, but I got up and left the damn session before Mary Dean and Al Capps finished it off, and I didn't get any credit, so I left it. I'm just kidding. But Cher cut 6 of my songs, and then in '75 I wrote for Mr. S. I'd written a song, several songs for Nancy Sinatra. And she took up one of my songs to Vegas, and he loved it and recorded it. It was called Only Couple on the Floor. It was his last single at Reprise. It wasn't a big record, but when you get Sinatra to cut one of your songs, it really was wonderful. And then from there on, I did a lot of Eastwood and Burt Reynolds pictures, and wrote for Fats Domino and Joe Williams, Peggy Lee, and a lot of different people in the Indian movies. And did 6 with Burt. And, I've been, but it all started with these guys, because I was selling dental equipment. I didn't ever tell you that, but that's what I was doing. Over the phone. I was selling this stuff, and I didn't even know what it was, to dentists in Georgia. But I was surviving, And I recently had a song with Reba McEntire that she cut for the show, and I think for CD release, and just finished with Chicago with Phil Ramone's doing a Christmas album, and I'm writing with them on some new stuff now. So I'm busy. It's great to be with you guys. Thank you.
So he's not just a pretty face. That's what I'm trying to say. Yes, sir.
Elkie, you played with Buck Owens. Did you record with Buck? Did you were on TV shows? Did you tour with Buck Owens and all? What's your affiliation?
Well, he moved to Tacoma from Bakersfield in 1958. So I started playing with him for a year. And through him, I played with a lot of the guys on the Grand Ole Opry. And never toured with him, never recorded with him. We had a television show. He bought a radio station and had a radio show. But that's what I did with Buck. And I was working with him when I met Don Buck.
As a matter of fact, we were working in the same cabaret. It was in downtown Tacoma in, well, let's see now, how can I describe this? If there wasn't, let me just tell you this. They used to have a paddy wagon out in front of the place. And I got to tell you, they hauled 5 or 6 people out of there every night. If there wasn't 5 fights, beer bottles coming at you, I mean, it was a slow night. So those are the kind of places we started in, really honest. But Buck Owens was playing there. And I'm thinking, gee, if he can do it, we can do it. How many? Is that what you said? Oh, absolutely.
You were asking if we ever thought that before we started, that to have that kind of success.
Yeah.
When we walked around, after we cut it, I didn't think it was a hit. I didn't expect anything to happen with it like it did. What we were trying to do at the time is build up a name so we could get better jobs locally, so we could quit our day job, because we were so tired of construction.
And we didn't want to pick up anything heavier than a guitar pick. We were just trying for, like Bob said, just maybe some local recognition so we could be just musicians, regardless of what we made. But, yeah, thank you.
We have a question here.
Who? Mel? That's that story. Let's see. That's a pretty long story. I'll answer that in just a second.
Yeah, I was going to tell you about the club that we worked in, one of them. It's called the Blue Moon. And we worked there, and they paid us $25 a night, and we had to split that 4 ways.
And do 5 cents. Yeah, really, And then we had our day jobs too. You know, couldn't hardly live on that. Okay, Mel Taylor, you said? Yeah. Okay, we met Mel Taylor in a club that in Los Angeles in North Hollywood that's called the Palomino Club. It was a very popular country club, and
He was with the house band.
yeah, he was with the house band. We came in there one night after doing a local show, and
With Dwayne Eddy, as a matter of fact.
yeah, with Dwayne Eddy. That's
Met
right.
him the same night.
Yeah. And we came in there, and he got us up and said, you know, would you come up and play whatever? And we said, well, you know, what are you going to play? He says, well, I only know one of your songs is Walk Don't Run. So we got up and played it with him, and it just so happened that our drummer had gotten in a car accident. He couldn't travel anymore. But he got in that accident long before he joined us. But it just got worse and worse. He, I guess, broke his neck and his back wasn't good, and so he couldn't travel anymore. So he got a job with somebody else that was not traveling, and he was still playing the drums. And we needed a drummer. We were between drummers, and we liked Mel's playing, and he was, you know, more our style of drummer. So that's how that happened. Yes. Bob Spalding? Where is he?
Plays drums.
What's your story, Bob Spalding?
Oh, well, I'm misplaced back here. Let me say first of all that I'm probably the luckiest guy in the world. Actually, I am the luckiest guy in the world because I get to play with these guys, and I have been playing with them for about 25 years. So it's been a real neat thing. And for someone who saw them in 1962 in Japan, when they first came over, and I was in Japan, and I was, I think, 13 or 14 years old at the time, and it's really been neat. So working for these guys has been extremely gratifying, and being able to do both fill in and play and do the recordings and arranging, and being fortunate enough that they've done some of my songs has been really great. So I really appreciate that. I got involved pretty eclectic way, I guess, because early on in my musical career, I was with a band, and fortunately we were on United Artists, and there was a band called Sweet Pain, and I was able to meet the Ventures because they were on Liberty, and Liberty had just, United Artists had just bought a Liberty label. So I was able to meet Mel and Bob, I think, down at UA one time. I got to see them come to their recording sessions and stuff. And later on, I was able to do some work with Mel. And in 1981, when I got a call at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they said, Milky was sick, you want to fly out to New York and play? I said, sure, I'll go ahead and do that. So I flew out, with about, maybe 2 hours of sleep, and we played in New York, and then finished that tour off. And then, from then, it's been, I think, off and on, recording and filling in and being a utility person. And
He's
so,
filled in with each one of us at different times for emergencies or things like that.
So,
The bass,
Yeah. He plays everything.
Yeah.
He's the closest person I've ever seen that plays my style. And when you hear him play my style, you can't tell the difference.
so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Actually, Bob, he works with us a lot on arrangements too in the studio. He does a lot of studio work with us, and so he's been a great help to us. We're really fortunate to have met him a long time ago. They say the key to success, I think, is having good people around you, and we've been really lucky with that. A lot of help with that.
He made that very simple to say, well, I came and we played there, but hey, you know what? He had 2 hours sleep, and we got him immediately into the room that we were in, and we worked him over for about 8 hours, and that's how that happened. That's the name of that tune. And just songs that he knew, but he wasn't that familiar with. So, but it worked out well, very well.
Are we going to hear more Bob Bowen play guitar on this cruise?
Are we, Bob?
Well, how many you want?
He's bashful.
You know,
Hurricane?
yeah, I could do that one, but, you know, I don't really feel comfortable on lead. I feel so much more comfortable on bass. I really enjoy the bass, so it's like pulling teeth to get me to play lead.
There's a question back here from the cheap seats. What the?
I just wonder if you want to learn your songs, what's the best source besides playing the records? Is there a really good transcription for that?
Is there?
You know, there are.
Yeah, I think there's a few songbooks around, but I'm not sure. I really don't know.
There's actually, I've been in Japan a few.
Here's the problem, none of us read. So we can't look at a book and tell you if it's right or not.
We're not talking just music either.
Are you looking for tabulature of the group? There's a number of tab books in Japan. I actually purchased them. It's probably a series of 5 or 6. And if you look at the way they play and you look at the way they tab it, it's really not very accurate. But it does capture the melody and it kind of gives you the flavor of what to do. And then if you listen to the CD, you can probably figure it out. The Ventures put out one with, what was the name of the public? I think Hal Leonard? Pipeline. About 3 years ago, there was a tab book called Pipeline, and those transcriptions are pretty accurate. So you might look on the internet. I think Amazon's got it.
Have you ever thought about doing actual videos for
Yeah, let's see a book over here. What am I bidding for this? I think that's an excellent book.
Have you ever thought about doing actual videos where you teach the songs?
Question is, we ever thought about doing a teaching video? We did have some teaching records out back in the 60s, and they did very well for us, but no, we've never gotten around to doing, we thought about it once. We had a company or a person in New York that had some teaching videos, and he wanted to have us on something, but I don't know what happened, never came about. Jeff just told me he reads a little, but not enough to hurt his playing.
Okay.
Wonder if you could give us some information about not only the ones you're playing, a little bit of the history and the story of the whole Volkswagen thing and all that.
Yeah, sure. We met Semi Mosley through Noki. Semi made Noki a guitar. And he said, if you play this on the road and you sell them, I'll give you, what, $50 or something, or whatever you sell. And so but he liked the guitar. And we kind of liked the guitar when we first started with it. And the whole story is that Semi was really hard-headed, and he made a guitar the way he wanted to make a guitar, and not the way you wanted him to make it for you to play, what felt good to you. And he had promised over and over and over and over again that he would do that, but he never did. I mean, the guitar has a good tone. I've got nothing against the guitar, but he just would not move, and so we just got tired of it, and we just said, no, you're not going to make us a neck that we are comfortable with, then we're through, and that's what happened. That's how that happened. Now we're playing this Aria guitar, and from Japan. It's a hell of a guitar. I really like that guitar, and those people work with you now. We were working with them for about, I don't know, what has it been, about 2 years now? And they made us prototypes, and we said, no, 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 no. And, they got better and better and better, and so finally they did what we wanted them to do. And we said yes. So we're playing them, and we really like them. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
There's a few Aria guitars around. Actually, they have quite a bit of sales in the U.S., but it's sparse.
Yeah, not the
not the
Venture.
Venture, not the Ventures guitar. They're not here yet, but
They will be.
the previous models
There are plans.
are in several stores. Aria product. Well, this guitar is on the rack in Japan exactly the way it is, but it just hasn't reached, this model hasn't reached America yet. This is really, it's almost like a custom guitar. It's very expensive. It goes for about $3,500 in Japan. So I don't think Americans
Yeah,
are,
maybe more. That's right.
I don't think Americans are used to paying that kind of prices for guitars, so it's going to take them a while probably to get them into this market, and it'll probably have to be modified a little bit, not quite so expensive. This has a lot of carving on it and beading and things like that, which is, you know, more or less for styling, but it's expensive to manufacture.
Yeah, the guitar wouldn't stay in tune when we first started with it. I mean, I told them, I said, you know, you can't play a guitar that won't stay in tune. So I used to have my old trusty Fender with me. And when it went out of tune, I'd have to tune it, and then I'd have to tune it again. But they finally got that fixed. And then they had a kind of a Bigsby
type.
Yeah, whammy bar.
Whammy
Yeah.
bar.
Yeah. And now they've done more like the Fender. And it's, we prefer that. So it plays great.